My skirt was already slipping down my thighs when I realized I couldn't bring myself to stop him. I wasn't under any influence. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't confused. I was standing there, heart pounding, lips parted, skin alert to every breath and every brush of air between us. As Daniel, my best friend's father, knelt behind me and whispered, "Let me take care of you." I felt my world tilt in a way I never expected. He was twice my age, a widower, someone I had known since I was barely out of high school. He used to bring us snacks during movie nights, drive us to school events, and cheer the loudest during our graduation. But that night in his study, with the door shut and the air thick with the scent of cedar, and something distinctly him, he looked at me differently. He didn't see me as his daughter's friend anymore. He saw a woman. And when his hand brushed against the small of my back, I didn't move away. I let it happen. And the moment his lips grazed the inside of my thigh, I knew I had crossed into a place I could never walk back from. What I didn't realize was how that night would shift the course of my life. How something that felt like comfort in the moment would later leave cracks in everything I thought I knew about myself. Before I dive deeper into this tangled story, I want to thank everyone who's been supporting this channel. Every like, every comment, every subscription means the world to me. And for those of you just joining us or returning for more, make sure you click that subscribe button. Your support fuels these stories and helps this space grow. Now let's go back to the beginning. Back to the night I found myself emotionally tangled with a man I never should have allowed into my heart. My name is Leah. I was 23 years old when everything changed. I had recently dropped out of nursing school because I simply couldn't keep up. With tuition, with bills, with the daily pressure of pretending I had it all figured out. I was exhausted. I was working long shifts at a diner off Route 17 in Georgia, scrubbing tables and pouring coffee with a smile that barely reached my eyes. On the nights I couldn't afford to go home, I crashed at my best friend Haley's place. Haley and I were opposites. She was fearless, bold, from a wealthy family. Her dad, Daniel, owned a chain of car dealerships and a lakeside cabin we used to sneak off to when we were teens. Daniel was the kind of man who wore crisp suits even on weekends. Always composed, always polished. He had that silver hair, and those dark eyes that made people pay attention without him saying a word. After Haley's mom passed away from cancer, something changed in him. He became quieter, gentler, but not weak. There was something magnetic about him. Something I didn't understand back then. I still remember the first time he stepped in to help me. I was sitting on the back porch one evening, crying silently over an eviction notice. Haley was inside, laughing at something on her phone, completely unaware. Daniel came out with a cold drink in hand, and saw the tears on my cheeks. He sat beside me and simply said, "You're trying so hard to stay afloat, Leah. Let me help." He paid my rent that month. A few weeks later, he gave me a used car from one of his dealerships. And not long after that, he helped me get a job as a receptionist at his office. It all felt like kindness, generosity from someone who had always been there in the background. That was the beginning of what I now call the favor. But favors, especially from men like Daniel, often come layered in things you don't see at first. One late afternoon, I was going over some paperwork in his office. I dropped a pen and bent down to retrieve it. When I stood up, he was standing close behind me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath near my shoulder. "You're beautiful, Leah," he said, his voice low. I froze. That was the first time he had ever said something so direct. I looked over my shoulder, and his hand was already resting gently on my waist. I should have stepped away. I should have said something. But instead, I leaned into it. I let the moment unfold. I let him see me, touch me, connect with a part of me that had long felt invisible. That evening in his study, the lines between support and something more blurred completely. What began with a whisper turned into an exchange of comfort and vulnerability. I wasn't thinking about consequences. I was thinking about how good it felt to be seen, really seen. Of course, I told myself it was a one-time thing. A lapse. A moment of human weakness. But it didn't end there. The next morning, I got a text from Daniel. "Come to the lake house. Just us." No explanation. No apology. Just a quiet command. And I went. I found a key waiting at the side entrance. A guest room prepped with fresh white linens, and a soft robe waiting on the bed. And when he held me again, this time with sunlight streaming in through the windows, it felt even more surreal. The secrecy made it thrilling. The way he looked at me made me feel like the center of his world. That one night turned into weekends. He sent money, paid off my remaining school loans, bought me clothes, shoes, even perfume. He gave me a life I couldn't afford, and in return, I gave him parts of myself I had never shared with anyone else. Haley never suspected a thing. She thought her father was just helping me out of kindness. She used to joke that I was like another daughter to him. If only she knew. At first, I carried the guilt like a badge of honor, something I could tuck away under sweet lies and smiles. Daniel told me I gave him hope again after losing his wife, that I reminded him he was still alive. I wanted to believe him, and for a while I did. But then he changed. Slowly at first. He wanted to know who I was talking to, where I was going. He started to pull me away from Haley. "Keep your distance," he'd whisper. "She's starting to ask questions." At first I laughed it off, but then Haley did ask. "Why don't you hang out anymore?" she asked one night. "You seeing someone?" I shook my head and mumbled something about being busy. She laughed and hugged me. "As long as it's not my dad," she joked. I smiled, but inside, I was falling apart. That night, I told Daniel we needed to slow down. He looked at me with that same unreadable expression. "After everything I've done for you," he said, his voice quiet but firm. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a box. Inside was a bracelet. "You don't walk away from me, Leah." And I didn't. I stayed, even when every part of me wanted to run. Then came the dinner invitation. Just me, Haley, and her father. I hadn't seen her in weeks, and I knew she was starting to wonder. I told Daniel I had to go. Otherwise she'd know something was wrong. That evening, I walked into their home, nerves buzzing. Daniel sat at the head of the table, perfectly calm, acting as though we were strangers. But under the table, his foot slid along my leg, a silent reminder. I was shaking. Haley kept talking, laughing, sharing stories. And then she said it. "Dad, remember the night Leah stayed late helping with paperwork? What were you two working on again?" Daniel looked at her and said, "Just bills and taxes." Then he turned to me with a look that dared me to say otherwise. I nodded, lips dry, praying she wouldn't press further. She didn't. Not that night. But 2 weeks later, it all came crashing down. I was at Daniel's house, just finished getting ready. I felt hollow. As I was brushing my hair, my phone buzzed. It was Haley. "We need to talk. Now." Then the phone rang. "I saw the messages," she said, her voice trembling. "I saw the receipts. The pictures. You were with my dad." I froze. No words came. There was nothing I could say. "You were my best friend," she whispered. "And you betrayed me." She hung up. That was the last time I heard from her. She blocked my number, shared a vague post online, and the whispers started. Screenshots. Assumptions. Judgment. I lost friends. I lost the job Daniel gave me. And Daniel, he disappeared too. Said he had to protect his reputation. The gifts stopped. The calls stopped. I was left alone, with nothing but the weight of my choices. I don't blame him completely. I let it happen. I stayed long after the warning signs. I confused attention with care. I mistook passion for affection. And by the time I understood the difference, it was too late. I hit my lowest point a month later. Back to working shifts, barely scraping by. But I used the pain. I turned it into purpose. I went back to school. Paid every penny myself. Found a therapist. Found healing. I started sharing my story. Not as a victim, but as someone who learned the hardest way that not all help is free. Some favors come with hidden costs. If someone wants to support you but asks for secrecy, ask yourself what they're really giving and what they're taking. And never, ever betray the one person who saw you as family. Thank you for listening. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment, share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Your support keeps this channel alive. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.